latest and most tech-rich Mustang to date remains one of the cheapest ways to get a V8 coupe. How many sub-100,000 cars can you name with more than 4 cylinders and a manual gearbox? It's slim pickings. There's the BMW Z4, BMW M2, and Lotus Emira, a last-of-the-line Porsche 718 GTS 4.0 or Toyota GR Supra, maybe? Good news, there is one more option, which has, instead of a piffling 6 cylinders, a full 8 of them, and neither a supercharger or a turbocharger. It is, of course, the good old new Ford Mustang. Design and styling. It might seem ironic that this manual straw-to-clutch comes from the country that embraced the automatic transmission before the rest of the world. But the thing is, the Americans still love a stick shift in their performance cars, and if it weren't for their appetite for manual Porsches and M cars, the Germans would long have made those auto-only. This isn't the first time we've driven a 7th-generation Mustang in the UK. We road-tested the Ford Mustang Dark Horse version in November of 2024, but it failed to convince. Precisely due to its clunkomatic 10-speeder, and the mismatch between the Mustang's core character as a bruiser and the Dark Horse-specific track addenda. So here we will focus on the standard GT with a 6-speed manual, which we like a lot more. We will get to why in a second. If you want to learn about all the nuts and bolts of the new S650 generation Mustang, our Dark Horse review has all the details. Interior. Inside, the big change compared with the previous generation car is that the traditional double-cowled analog instrumentation has been digitized. The double-browed dashboard remains in a sense, but is now topped with a massive screen. All UK cars come with a dashboard with digital display running Ford's latest sync for software. It combines a 12.3-inch instrument cluster and a 13.2-inch infotainment screen and can receive over-the-air software updates to modern. Just switch those new graphics for a recreation of the clocks from the 1979 Fox Body Mustang. Below the screen sits a row of shortcut buttons for things like defogging the windows and turning off the traction control, plus a knob for the stereo volume. Fit and finish are quite good. The controls and buttons feel sturdy enough, well damped, and evidently on the receiving end of some real attention to ergonomics, with a traditional style handbrake lever even though it is electronic. A button to turn off the lane-keeping assistance mounted on the steering wheel, and the gear stick sighted close to your thigh. The infotainment is generally fine to use. It's easy enough to get used to, thanks in part to being powered by the Unreal Engine developed for console games. It can occasionally be slightly laggy, particularly when switching drive modes. You can blame the slightly over-the-top accompanying animation for this. Engines and performance. But back to the main event, the powertrain. Let's start with the gearbox. You might expect a really burly shift quality, but it's surprisingly delicate, with a light action and relatively short throws. It can feel a bit snaggy if you rush it, but surely learning to finesse your shifts is part of the fun when you have deliberately said no to an automatic. And unlike the auto, the manual doesn't disobey your commands. The clutch is fairly heavy, but not annoyingly so, and while the throttle and brake pedal aren't ideally aligned for heel-land towing, it's doable. There's an automatic rev matching mode as well. It is absurdly long gear, second tops out north of 80 miles per hour. Weirdly, the manual Dark Horse gets an entirely different manual, still with 6 speeds, but made by Tremec instead of Getrag, and with shorter ratios. The Tremec's shift quality is a lot meatier too. The long ratios are doubly odd because Ford's Coyote 5.0-liter V8 isn't some old-school chugger. It revs to 7,400 revolutions per minute and wants to be kept on the boil. Accelerating from 50 to 70 miles per hour requires a downshift from 6. The good news is that it sounds spectacular at any revs, so you don't feel like you're missing out if you don't take it to the red line all the time. It's perfectly burbly at lower revs and hardens to a hammering roar at higher revs. And with the manual, you just feel even more connected to that amazing engine.